Hey everyone, thanks for coming to this. I'm Josh, I work in TypeScript things, and I've been like this my whole career. I'm excited about linting. Who here's excited about linting? Woo! One guy in the back, a speaker waving a glow stick. Thanks for that. Love it. I get this nice, warm, fuzzy feeling whenever a tool tells me that's wrong, you silly goose, do it better. But I realize it's okay, this is reasonable. Most people feel like this instead when the tool yells at them, gives them that little angry red squiggly. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, the FUD, that's how most of us experience linters, which is reasonable. But I don't like this. I don't like looking at the editor and getting squigglies. Oh no, something is broken. I don't know why it's mangry, and I shouldn't have read the docs to find out. That's silly. And because I know all my code's right, I'm just going to ignore it and move on. No, I don't like that. I don't like doing that. I don't like being like that. I had 2 macchiatos beforehand. That was a mistake. I'm saying today we should no longer FUD it up. No more fear, uncertainty, doubt with our linters. Instead, we're going to love and appreciate. Who here has heard of static analysis? Yeah. We're going to love it. We're going to feel confident. We're going to appreciate its worth. Let's dive in. Okay. Static analysis. What is it? Why the squigglies in the editor? The technical term that I like for this is static analysis is tooling that scrutinizes code without running it. Without running it, just right there in your editor. Which is in contrast with more traditional tools, additional traditional tools like testing, unit tests, end-to-end tests, vuejs, Cypress, Playwright, all that. And static analysis typically exists on a spectrum, from the really fast stuff like formatters to the slow but powerful stuff like type checkers. Who here has heard of TypeScript? It was in the last talk. You have all heard of TypeScript. My God. And then in the middle, which is where I generally sit, is the linter area. Linting. Yes. Who here's heard of ESLint? Yes. It wasn't in the last talk, but I appreciate you've all heard of it. And let's talk about that. What is a linter? What is ESLint? Prior to that, TSLint or JSHint or all those things. A linter is a static analysis tool that runs a discrete set of individual toggleable rules on your source code. Each of those rules is its own thing. I sometimes call it a check or an angry thing. Each of those rules may sometimes report, hey, that code is wrong per the thing I'm supposed to be looking for. And each of those reports might include an autofix or a suggestion for how you might improve your code. Some of those fixes might be totally safe, or some of them might be kind of dangerous, so it'll let you be the one to trigger them. For example, who here has heard of logical assignment operators? All my TC39 nerds out there, yay, that's me. So ESLint comes with a lot of really nice rules by default. One of them is logical assignment operators, which says, hey, I see you did something like x equals x or y. Fun fact, in JavaScript, there is now an operator. There's now an operator, haha, or equals. Did anyone know about this? No, that's why ESLint is so awesome, because it can tell you, hey, this is this new syntax that you can use. It'll help improve your code. It'll make it a little cleaner. And that rule will autofix for you. So if you want to get started with ESLint, awesome. npm install is a dev dependency. It's got this nice little @ESLint/config, which will walk you through setting up your config. And then npx ESLint dot to run ESLint on your current directory. Great. Now, ESLint has a lot of rules, and many of them come in a recommended rule set. So in your ESLint config, if you're just starting from scratch, you can say extends ESLint : recommended to get that list of rules. These are the rules that the ESLint team and many community contributors have over the years iterated on, researched, determined, or the things probably most projects probably want to enable. Really useful. But we're talking about React, so let's talk about the React plugins. There are 2 plugins for ESLint that are really popular that are used with React specifically. There are others that are, say, for JSX or regular expressions, but today we're going to focus a little bit on React and React hooks. ESLint plugin React and ESLint plugin React hooks. In this config here, we see that you have plugins listed. I want to load in a bunch of rules and preset configs from these 2 NPM packages. And I also want to extend their recommended rule sets. Just curiosity, show of hands, who here does that in their ESLint configs? Like a quarter of the audience? Not enough. Let's get excited about this. Also, I always sort my configs. I know that's incredibly annoying to everyone, but that's just me. So let's take an example of something you could catch with static analysis with a linter. Does anyone see the React complaint, or what would cause a React complaint? What is it? Key key. Thank you. Great job, audience. Missing key prop for element and iterator, such as an array, a map. And you have to add a key there. Yay. And this actually is an auto-fixable rule, I believe. If you click the little light bulb in VS Code or similar and select the thing, it'll do it for you. I might be wrong. Actually, I don't think this one's auto-fixable. I'm wrong. It's not. I just messed up. Let's look at a different React thing, specifically with hooks. Now, specifically about use callback. So the first half of the code, not about the button or the image. Does anyone see the issue? The depths? I couldn't hear any of you, but I think that's what you said. Yeah. There might be another one. I might have messed up again. But React hook use callback has a missing dependency times. That is what you said. Thanks. Yeah. So if you were to re-render the component with a different times prop, the on-click would not have the updated value. So if anyone here knew that already, great. Maybe this rule does nothing for you. But maybe you have new developers on your code base. Maybe you yourself are new to React. Maybe you don't read every single line of code 3 times, sleep on it, come back the next day, read it another 3 times to be able to catch every single possible bug. I don't know about you, but I've caused bugs before that in retrospect were like, okay, you knew better. Does anyone see the other bug in this code also would have been caught by a lint rule? Alt, yes! Oh yeah, we can auto-fix that one. Alt, image, alt equals some text or blank. Accessibility is real important, and lint rules can help you with accessibility too, because I would say messing up accessibility is an extremely bad bug. Don't do that. Yay, accessibility. So fun fact, if you got rules that are difficult to enable, you have a lot of issues, maybe you want to ease into them, you can set them as warning. For context, ESLint rules can be configured as off, error, or warn, where error causes the red squiggly and it'll fail the build. Warn will cause a yellow squiggly in the editor, and it won't cause ESLint to status code 1 fail build. And you can do so by configuring a rules object. I also recommend if you do use up some warnings, then add max warnings 0 to your ESLint config to tell ESLint to still fail the build if you have warnings. Because in my experience, if you leave warnings in, little things that don't fail the build, they will fester and grow over time, like a bad stain in your kitchen. So max warning 0. I will also say maybe the fact that you are putting in warnings is a sign that perhaps there are rules that are generally good, but like in a few places maybe are not relevant. There's a built-in rule no console, which is really great. Forces you to, instead of using the built-in console.log, for example, use your own fancy logger your team set up. But maybe there's a specific place you want to meow. You can comment a disable on next line for ESLint. That's totally okay if you have read the code and determined, yes, the rule is wrong. Ha, I, developer, am correct. And there's also a really nice ESLint flag, report unused disabled directives. It says, hey, if you were to, let's say, refactor the code to now use your fancy logger to meow, ESLint will report a complaint. You silly goose, you don't need that. You can just delete that comment. And then you can even -- fix in ESLint to auto-fix all safe suggestions, all things that don't actually change the runtime of your code, but do fix, little issues like, a comment that's not necessary. Cool stuff so far, yeah? Okay. All right, VS Code? Yeah, thanks. I like VS Code. You don't have to use it. This is all stuff you can do in basically any editor or equivalent. But there is a really good ESLint extension for VS Code. And then also, I recommend code actions on save source.fixall.eslint true. Fixes all auto-fixable and safe rule complaints on file save. And because I use plugins that sort my imports and sort my object properties and all that, it's really nice to not have to do that myself and then just hit save and the whole file gets sorted. So I realize this is supposed to be a talk on bugs, but my God, is that stuff useful. I just noticed my mouse is on the screen. How long has that been there? Okay. Thanks for telling me. By the way, and I'm going to give you all a piece of advice I'm sure some of you will disagree with, but repeat it, just say it out loud with me anyway. Stop using ESLint for formatting. Please, for the love of God, do not use the built-in ESLint rules, indent or semi or max line length or whatever. That's not what ESLint is for. Please take a photo of this and share it with all your friends on the talk and whatever. ESLint is not a good formatter. ESLint is a linter. Prettier, for example, is a really good formatter. Dprint is another one. A lot more configurable, a lot faster, less well known. Use a dedicated formatter because a linter is not a formatter. But let's absorb that. A linter, such as ESLint, is not a formatter. It can include some rules, such as the indent rule that'll make sure you use the right amount of indentation. But recall that a linter runs a set of discrete rules, discrete checks, each of which may autofix and don't know about each other. So when you try to use ESLint with a bunch of rules that enforce good white space and semicolons and all this, it'll take a lot of cycles where each rule keeps autofixing and eventually they'll conflict and then resolve and then get to the point. Whereas a formatter such as Prettier reformats all in one pass, which is so much faster. It means that formatters don't have logic. They can't fix bugs the way ESLint does, but they are real fast at formatting. So I'm on the TypeScript ESLint team, and we have given up. We've given up on formatting rules. There's an indent rule. We have a pinned issue saying we're not going to fix it. Shove off. So please use a formatter. Please. I always need to. I've learned the hard way. I need to calm down after this stuff. Let's talk about something that makes us all feel joy and cheer and happiness instead. TypeScript! Yay! What is TypeScript? TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. Just curious, who here uses TypeScript? Awesome. Almost everyone. Not everyone, which is awesome. Who here saw the TypeScript documentary? A few. Okay, cool. JavaScript describes your code's values, like the actual stuff in your variables, your functions. TypeScript lets you additionally describe the value's intent, what they're supposed to be used for, which is awesome, which is key, because intent is not always inferable from the values. And TypeScript gives you 4 things to let you do this. TypeScript comes with the concept. It's not even a tool, just the idea of a programming language, which is a superset of JavaScript. It's JavaScript plus a bunch of other syntax, like interface declarations and type annotations. TypeScript does also come with a tool called the type checker, which reads in your JavaScript and/or TypeScript files and lets you know, aha, you said one thing for intent, but did something else in the values. You're wrong, probably, maybe. TypeScript additionally comes with a compiler, which everyone has a different definition of what's a transpiler versus compiler versus type checker. But in my personal headcanon, a compiler is a tool that runs a transpiler, so it turns your TypeScript files into JavaScript, and also runs the type checker. Let's fight about that after the conference if you really want. And then lastly, TypeScript also provides a language service, which is the thing that runs in editors such as VS Code. Now this is key and cool because once in a while, some project will announce that they're dropping the TypeScript syntax and switching to JS docs. So instead of using the TypeScript language stuff, it'll use like JavaScript comments to describe types. And then people on the internet will freak out that TypeScript is dying. No, they're just switching which syntax they're using to describe types. But the language service is still providing them value. And I feel the need to say this because recently, I think it was Svelte dropped types and everyone freaked out about TypeScript. They're still using TypeScript. Don't worry about it. And let's just quickly go over a bug or two that TypeScript would catch. This button component, my button, looks totally fine on its own. This is all JavaScript. But if we were to use it, confusion. Are we using it right? Is onClick required? Do we need it for that? Maybe we get it right someday, but what if we pass the wrong prop value for onClick? What heck if we know? So if we were to rename the file to TSX and run TypeScript on it, it would let us know, you said there's an onClick, and now you didn't. OnClick property is missing in type empty object, but required in onClick any. Any is the TypeScript description of, heck, if I know what it's supposed to be, just whatever, do whatever you want, as long as it exists. And if you were to enable the TypeScript compiler option in your TypeScript config file, tsconfig, no implicit any, saying, don't implicitly have anything, any type, meaning don't just leave something there that I can't tell what the type is supposed to be. TypeScript would yell at you saying, binding element on click, meaning the element in that prop binding destructure thing, implicitly is any. And if you were now to dip into the new TypeScript syntax and add my button props as an interface, for example, TypeScript would now know, on click is not implicitly any in the description of it, but your usage on click equals wat is wrong. Now this example is canned. I'm sure we could all spend a few minutes reading the code and figuring out that on click equals wat is not good. Something about the word wat probably hidden since it's a bug. But when you have a large code base, and maybe it was written in Flow or something, and you dropped all the types, it can be really difficult without the types from Flow or TypeScript to make these kinds of intuitive decisions. So if you're going to get started with TypeScript, almost all of you raised your hand, but it's totally reasonable to have not had the time before. npm install TypeScript as a dev dependency, tsc --init to create a nice starter TS config and print the link to the docs, and npx tsc to run the TypeScript compiler, which includes the TypeScript type checker on all your code. Awesome. Yay. And similar to how a linter is not a formatter, a linter is not a type checker. TypeScript builds up a full understanding of all this stuff in your code base, all your types, all your values, your files, your node modules, whereas a linter just runs a set of discrete rules. And a traditional linter, such as ESLint in the JavaScript landscape, does not understand types. And another conflict that they get is by default, if you install the ESLint extension and configure it normally, you get red squigglies both for ESLint and TypeScript, which is confusing to new people and experienced people. What is ESLint versus TypeScript? And frankly, kind of annoying and inconvenient. Like I personally generally fix TypeScript issues first, and then eventually I'll fix the linter complaints. So there's a way where you can actually configure ESLint warnings to show up as yellow, even if they're build blocking errors, so that you can tell that only one of these squigglies is from TypeScript in the red. Great little tip there. I'm real proud of this. I actually added this feature to VS Code, ESLint.rules.customizations. So this one says rule star, so everything changes the severity to warn. Cool. So that's a nice little tip. I see a few photos. I'll wait. All right. Now, one little extra tip before we move on. VS Code and many other editors come with their own version of TypeScript, but each of your projects might have a different version. So you can tell the editors, such as with VS Code's TypeScript.sdk setting, use the one that comes from node modules. Fun fact. Okay, now TypeScript and ESLint. Again, I work on the tooling TypeScript ESLint, which amusingly is neither on the TypeScript team nor on the ESLint team. We have the weirdest name I've ever seen. We come with two things that are important here. One is that TypeScript ESLint ships a package that is a parser that allows ESLint, which natively only understands JavaScript syntax, to understand and read in the TypeScript syntax. That's at TypeScript ESLint/parser. We additionally, separately, provide an ESLint plugin, similar to how we saw the React ones before. TypeScript ESLint provides a plugin that includes a whole bunch of rules tailored to or made available or possible by TypeScript types, and then also a few presets that you can extend from. So if you want to get started with your ESLint for TypeScript, add in the plugin TypeScript ESLint and extend from our recommended rules also. We'll turn off the core ESLint rules that are redundant with TypeScript syntax. And fun fact, some ESLint core rules are buggy when you have TypeScript code because they're built on the assumption that you don't have TypeScript code. So we'll turn those off and replace them with our fixed versions. That's not a dig, it's just TypeScript's a new language. And again, I like sorting my configs because I'm a maniac. Now, we also have a stylistic config. This is only a few months old. So if you set us up, say, last year, go through our docs again, we discovered the hard way that if you include stylistic recommendations in your recommended preset, people really hate that and will hate you and will stop using the linter. Does anyone here remember ESLint plugin Airbnb? Yeah. People who raised their hands did so with like this scowl on their face. Back in the day, a lot of companies used this plugin provided by Airbnb, which was very nice of them, that enabled a whole bunch of lint rules because many of the lint rules were useful and it was kind of annoying to configure them all yourself. But it also enabled a lot of stylistic lint rules, which then turned a lot of the community against ESLint. We're still recovering from that damage. But that's how the industry works, right? We learn things the hard way. There's no shame in trying something out, accidentally having it go viral in the dev community, and then everyone learns the same things around the same time. So thanks Airbnb for that thing. Let's never use it again. Okay, so let's just look at an example of a TypeScript ESLint rule. For those who haven't used this stuff before, in TypeScript you can use type assertions, which tell TypeScript, shut up about whatever you think the type is for this thing. It's actually this type. And you can say let name, or me equals name Holland as Holland, to tell TypeScript that the Holland property, or pardon me, the name property is not just any old string. It's always only ever going to be Holland. If you never use TypeScript, you're like, why is that useful? Don't worry, it's not in this talk. But TypeScript will tell you, aha, there's a fancier, better syntax for that. You can actually use as const to do the same thing in fewer characters of code. Thanks, TypeScript ESLint. Yay. But that's not super useful, what I just showed you. It's just like a little stylistic pro tip. I mentioned earlier that ESLint traditionally just doesn't understand types, that it only looks at your raw syntax, one file at a time even, is the technical description. And that's because ESLint was not built with TypeScript in mind. So TypeScript ESLint adds in this awesome new capability that we can plug into the TypeScript APIs. Because if we could plug into the TypeScript APIs and use their type checking, we could write lint rules that are based on the types of our code. Lint rules that not just look at the individual syntax, but build up that full understanding of everything. If only that were the case. Yes, it is. Because now with TypeScript ESLint and similar, you have this whole new class of linters that combine the best of linting and type checking. And also the worst, because this is the slowest set of lint rules you'll ever run. Performance bottlenecks, beware. I'm going to show you one of my favorite examples, the rule await thenable, which says, if you await something that is not a promise, does anyone here know what happens? Nothing, yeah. This code is unnecessary. That await is an unnecessary little tick in your code. You don't need to do that. So the rule now has a suggestion thingy where it'll just remove that for you. And that example, await console.log, most of you have probably not explicitly written await console.log. So let's look at a real example. I've roughly seen this in production code, simplified of course. Does anyone spot the bug, the unnecessary await? Well, there's only one await there, is a bit of a easy answer. But for those who haven't used React or aren't familiar with this specific component, if they're just looking at it fresh, it can be easy to miss these little things. But yeah, fun fact, the await on click is unnecessary. Now, one way to fix that would be to look at the type for onClick, which is, this is the syntax for a promise that returns nothing, void, ignore it. And you might say, okay, let's change that to a promise for nothing, because it's an asynchronous button. And that's fine. Maybe we just found a bug in our types with ESLint. Or what if no one ever passes in an asynchronous function? What if it's supposed to be synchronous? Which means that the await is actually unnecessary, which means the set running true and the set running false immediately before and after it are unnecessary because running will only ever be false because that's its initial state, which means that the initial state of running is never changed from false. There's no point of that function. And in fact, there's no point for the running state at all, which means the button is always disabled, which means we just eliminated a third of our code with linting. Yay! Woo! How awesome is that? The power of TypeScript ESLint. And here the bug was not just that the button had an unnecessary disabled prop, which might not even be the right thing in many accessibility-oriented circumstances, but also that a third of our code was dead. Dead code is bad, harder to read, takes up your build times, increases complexity, makes a lot of tasks around refactors take longer. We don't like dead code. So there's a whole set of rules that are recommended with type checking and a whole set of stylistic rules with type checking that you can extend from that include all the normal recommendations and stylistic things, plus the type checked ones. Now, one little tip, you do have to enable parser options.project. It used to be that you can only pass a string or array of strings for the paths or wildcard globs of your project files. We recently added project true, which is just find the closest TS config for each file so that the tooling knows your TypeScript compiler options to work with. But yeah, honestly, this is pretty great stuff. So I highly recommend if you've got a code base that is written in TypeScript and uses, let's say, React or anything similar, or even just is in TypeScript in general, go through the TypeScript ESLint docs. We put a lot of effort into them over the last year, and I'd really appreciate you trying them out. Cool. So this is a whole new world of awesomeness. Or for some of you, maybe this is all recap, in which case, talk to me. I love how much you know about TypeScript ESLint. And I want to recap with you what we just went over, because that was a lot of random things. We talked about static analysis, fear, uncertainty, doubt. It's a normal, reasonable reaction to hate it, especially if you don't have the time to dig into it. But there's actually a lot of useful stuff. We talked about linting. Stop using ESLint for formatting, please. We've given up on trying to get that to work. We talked about TypeScript, which is awesome. We talked about combining TypeScript and ESLint. And that last thing is, again, actually one of many real bugs I found using these toolings. Cool. So all the stuff that I talked about is available online. Fun fact, the ESLint plugin React package is a community authored package, whereas ESLint plugin React hooks is implemented in the React codebase. Cool. TypeScript ESLint, we're an independent open source project. We don't receive money from like major companies beyond the like a little bit, nothing that would really pay for a full-time person to work on it the way I do. So I would really appreciate any sponsorships y'all could send our way. Or even better, if you want to contribute, this coming month is Hacktoberfest, and we're going to be probably not opting into that because we don't have the budget. So, pay us. I'm Josh Goldberg, as was mentioned. I'm a full-time independent open source maintainer in the TypeScript ecosystem. Jazz hands. So I work on this type of stuff all the time. So if you want to talk to me afterwards, I'm always happy to chat open source, TypeScript, and so on. I also wrote a book, Learning TypeScript. Buy it today, rate it well, because that's how I get money to work on these things. Thanks, everyone. This has been fun.
Thank you very much.